So this is a development update. We had it last month as well, and I'm basically going to be presenting once a month just kind of an update to give the commissioners and the public an idea of what's going on in Stuart. I don't know if I can change the slides from here. I don't think so. Can you go to the next one? Okay, so this picture right here depicts the city of Stuart's boundaries, and it also depicts the outline of the only city in Martin County with a 1 ISO rating. Moving forward, and to understand the future land use map, a future land use is a general use of land. The red that runs along the US 1 corridor is commercial. The yellow is the low-density single-family. The light blue, kind of down toward downtown, is the urban center, and just north of the bridge as well was the CRA urban overlay zones that in 2001, the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council was hired by the City Commission to conduct a charrette, a study, and to provide these overlay zones because the city of Stuart was trying to revitalize its downtown. What was determined by the consultants as well as all of the feedback was that downtown essentially every day at 5 o'clock died, and on the weekends it was virtually a ghost town, and the businesses had trouble even surviving downtown, and they hired Andre Stuani to come up from Miami, a nationally known planner, and the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council conducted charrettes and studies, and they determined that the reason for that was that there was literally no housing in the urban center, and that was contrary to the idea of providing a vital downtown. So codes were changed, and essentially what the commission said was, well, we don't want to have any straight zoning. We don't want it to be where people can just come in and build whatever they want under these certain guidelines and make it fit in a box. What we want to do is we want to write the code so that the commission grants exceptions, and it was called special exception for everything for the first 7 years. And that way, every project will come before the commission, and it can be molded and negotiated with the commission to make sure it has a consistency and a relationship to the vision of the community and allowed for community input, et cetera. And when Carol Waxler and Mary Hutchinson became commissioners, they felt that the special exceptions were being granted every single time somebody came into the room, but that was actually the intent of the code, and they didn't like it being called special exception, and so they changed it to conditional use. The reality of it is it didn't change the code, it just changed the nomenclature because they felt like special exception sounded like the city was giving stuff away. But what was written into the code back then in this blue area that you see here was that in 2001, you were allowed to have 4 stories by right, as you are in Martin County, and they took that away. And they said, well, it's no longer 4 stories by right. It's only 4 stories by right if 25% of it includes residential. And I know there's a lot of people that feel strongly against residential these days, but in 2001, it was the contrary, and the planners were saying, no, you need the residential in order for your community to thrive after 5 p.m. and on weekends and to be vibrant. And for those of you that have been around prior to 2001, downtown was a different place. When they first started the Rock and River Walks on Sundays, a guy named Ron Hart had to go to all of the stores in downtown and ask them to stay open on Sundays, and they wouldn't. They didn't even stay open. There was nobody downtown, and they did the Rock and River Walk anyway, and downtown was about a third of the stores would be open, and that's it. Fast forward, the people living downtown and the consistency of the Downtown Business Association and the Stuart Main Street, as well as the patrons, Sundays turned into one of downtown Stuart's best days of the week from a standpoint of entertainment and people coming down and shopping, et cetera. In any event, the future land use is not the specifics of how many plants and how many windows and how many bedrooms. It's more of a broad idea. And this said, the future land use says, we want this to be kind of the downtown urban area, and then we want this to be the residential area, and this to be kind of the commercial business corridor, this also to be residential area, and of course up here as well. And then, of course, US 1 commercial area. And then down here, these kind of brownish is more of the multifamily, and there's Kingswood and Cedar Point Plaza, et cetera. Where it's white here, you can see like this is Snug Harbor, which was not in the city of Stuart, it's actually in the county. And in fact, all of the white area is county. Can you go to the next slide? So, the city of Stuart. It wasn't always called Stuart, it was called Potsdam at one point. This water tower is right here. It's changed over the years. I actually got married on top of the water tower right there. In any event, it was settled in the 1880s. It was pineapples, fishing, and boat building, and green turtles. I'm not sure what that means, but we won't say they ate them or killed them. But if you look off the shore here in really low tide, sometimes you can see some of the pilings that stick up where the decks used to be, that the boats would bring the pineapples into downtown Stuart and then load them onto the trains to be shipped to other areas. In 1914, the city of Stuart was incorporated as a city in Palm Beach County. Current population has gone up. I think it's closer to 18,700, but we'll get into that in a little while. And the square miles for the city of Stuart is a moving target as well, because if you look at the maps, the square mileage also includes the middle of the river, and it goes down the river based on where the channel is for the water, and so it does include water. Some people say it's 7 square miles, but either way. Median income is roughly $51,000. It was in the low 40s. Used to be the capital of Palm Beach County. It is now the Martin County's county seat. There's plenty of history here, and we pride ourselves in the preservation of same. As you can see, the Lyric Theater has been there for a very long time. But another thing you need to notice that's really important is downtown. It's full. It's busy. These are buildings that were here already. This development did not happen recently. This is not part of the reason for the traffic that I keep hearing about. Can we go to the next slide? So, comprehensive plan. I always hear, well, that's violating the comprehensive plan, or I'm a slow growther and I follow the comprehensive plan. And what the comprehensive plan is that in 1984, the state of Florida adopted regulations that said all zoning agencies, which would be counties and cities, are required to provide a comprehensive plan. And the legal, this is saying 1975, the Comprehensive Plan Act, but in 1984 is when it was mandated for everybody to do it. 1985, the state of Florida enacted the Local Government Comprehensive Planning and Land Development Regulations, which is 163, and it requires us to update that comprehensive plan every 7 years with year amendments. But I will tell you, in 1985, when the city of Stuart adopted its comprehensive plan, it projected that the build-out for the city of Stuart was going to be somewhere between 25 and 30,000 people. And as it went through, it updated, and everyone hears about annexation as well. But before you get into annexation, it used to be, prior to 1985, annexation would be if you wanted municipal services, libraries, sidewalks, streetlights, cable, water, sewer, things of that nature. When the state of Florida adopted these acts, they also put in what's called MSTUs, and people see on their tax bill you have MSTUs. Well, MSTU stands for Municipal Service Taxing Unit. And what they did is they made the 67 counties essentially act as cities. And of course, we're all agents of the state, so the counties had the ability to install these municipal services and then charge the residents that moved into the unincorporated areas taxes for the use of those services, just as the cities would. But when I hear the idea that if the city of Stuart annexes something that it's causing sprawl, that would be based on the presumption that if it didn't annex, there would be no building outside of Stuart. An example of that would be Palm City. Palm City was never annexed into the city of Stuart, but Palm City is not vacant by any means, obviously, because under the MSTUs it can be done. However, and no offense to those of you from Palm City, but if someone lives in Palm City and they come down and use the boardwalks and come to the 4th of July and watch the fireworks or whatever it might be, they pay their property taxes and, you know, they're part of the community. But the truth is they don't pay the city any taxes, so they don't contribute to the maintenance of the boardwalk. They don't contribute to the fund for the fireworks. They don't contribute to the security necessary or the parks, et cetera, that are obviously centrally utilized. And the same goes for people from outside of the county as well. And that's fine. It just happens to be that when annexations come along, the pretext is that the cities should annex to have that development be inside the city limits so that when those taxes are collected, it also gets shared between the county and the city. Can I go to the next slide, please? So this is 1974 Stuart. And the reason I included this slide is because, wow, it looks like Stuart now. So whatever you remember from the traffic in 1974, as I do, Stuart was there. It already had happened. So it's all here. You know, go to the next slide, please. 1974 North. Okay, if you go back one slide again. I also want to point out this is also the only city in the county that has a 1 ISO rating that we just got renewed on Friday. Go to the next slide, please.
1 ISO.
This is 1974 North Stuart. So right here's the Roosevelt Bridge going over the river. This has been annexed into Stuart right here, but this is North River Shores. That was there. This is Jensen Beach Boulevard. This is the Best Buy, et cetera. Can we go to the current Stuart? This wasn't here, but it's all here now. But even without being annexed into the city, a lot of this development happened, and sure enough, annex didn't cause sprawl.
Mike, it looks like the part that was annexed in the city has actually a lot less density.
Yeah, this is the portion that was annexed into the city right here.
Right.
That's the
all the
cities
green
and
space.
Haney Creek. Yeah, and Haney right there. If we go to the next slide, this is 1974 south of the city. So if we go, this is US 1 leading south. This is Canner Highway kind of going out south this way. You can see Salerno Road, but might be right at there. I don't know if that's Indian Street or, yeah, that's Indian Street right there. Go to the next slide. And that's what south of the city looks like now. But go back to the one before. So in 1974, you can see the airport right here, and the city limits is, you know, the stuff's in it. It's already built. This traffic was being generated. Go to the next slide. This down here and all this, and I'm not saying it's wrong or bad or anything wrong with it, but what happens is these people travel down US 1 and down Canner Highway to come downtown or to go places, and we see traffic from that. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but I hear every day that Stuart's development has created all of this traffic. And when I look at it, I can clearly see by a map that these outer limits are where traffic comes from. Move to the next one.
I think the contention would be that if you add 2,000 to 3,000 units of development
But
over
we're going to get to that next.
period,
We're gonna get to that
it's going to increase the population density in that
Without a
city.
doubt. And that's why I'm bringing these presentations forward, because I think it's important. 1974, south of Indian Street. So I kind of zoomed in. You can see the river going there. This is the south down to Cove Road, maybe. Go to the next one. Quite a bit of development. This was part of those preserve areas, which is good. You can see 95 is now here. Didn't happen before till 1990. Keep going. This is west of Stuart. So in this particular image, Stuart is over here, but you can see it was full. It was busy. Lighthouse Point, North River Shores, all the way down. That's the Palm City Bridge. And this is essentially Palm City. Next one. And now it's changed quite a bit. You can see. Next one. This is the south of Indian Street again, and go to the next. They're probably mixed up a little bit. Again, lots of stuff. So here are our populations. Historic population. Census 20, 30, 40, 50, all the way to 2020. Population of 778. 147% growth rate in 1930. It went from 700 to 1,900 people. Martin County came in 1925. It had a 23% growth rate because it went from 5,000 to 6,000. St. Lucie County showed up in 1910, 1920, Port St. Lucie didn't come, 330 people in 1970, which is a major number. But they did have a 4,000% growth rate the next year. Moving forward, though, if you look here in like the 1970s, you had a 0.6% growth rate, and then 1980, it went from 4,000 to 9,000. So it added 5,000 people, and it had a 96% growth rate. 1970 to 1980, Martin County, though, didn't add 5,000 people. It added 30,000 people. And then if you go 1980 to 1990, Stuart added 2,000 people. Martin County didn't add 2,000, it added 35,000. And then 90 to 2000, Stuart added 3,000 people. 90 to 2000, Martin County added 25,000 people. And then 2 to 210, Stuart added about 1,000 people. 2 to 210, Martin County added another 20,000 people. And then 210 to 220, Stuart added about 2 to 3,000. Martin County added another 12,000. So when you start hearing about these percentages and growth rates, you have to understand that percentages really mean nothing. What you recognize is that Stuart, from 1930 to now, well, let's just call it 18,000, and that was 2,000, has added 16,000 people. Well, Martin County has added 16,000 people every single decade from 1930 or from 1960 to the current present. And there's nothing wrong with that because Martin County is 10 times the size of Stuart. It's not supposed to have not done it. I'm just saying that when I get to hear this fact that Stuart's got this overwhelming number of people, it really hasn't added that many people over that time. And in fact, the land had already been impacted.
The frustration is with the apartments, Mike. The frustration is with the 2,000 to 3,000 apartments.
We're going to get to that next, too. I'm going to talk about them. The other thing is the city of Port St. Lucie. The city of Port St. Lucie, and again, nothing wrong with it, but the Mackerleaf brothers bought all the land up in St. Lucie County many, many years ago, and they platted the land and had phone banks and different ways to sell land to people all over the country. And it grew quickly, and one of their most well-spoken mayors was very excited about it and brought Port St. Lucie kind of into the new age and started doing infrastructure and things like that. And in 2004, Port St. Lucie was the fastest growing city in the United States. It would play games with Las Vegas as to who was in first and who was in second place. But in 2005, Frank Brogan, who at the time was the lieutenant governor for the state of Florida, but was also a second grade teacher here in Stuart and had also been education commissioner, superintendent, among other things, spoke at the BDB luncheon, and everyone had these fears of all this growth, and they said Martin County is Browardizing, and they're going to turn into Broward County, and here comes Browardization. And he said, you don't have to worry about Browardization because you have a comprehensive plan in place. And it doesn't matter when the growth happens, because if you have a comprehensive plan in place, it can all happen at once, or it can happen over a course of years, but the comprehensive plan is designed to capture that population and be ready for it. And in Martin County, you have a height limit of 4 stories, so the economic impact is that no one's going to buy a 3-story or a 2-story building and tear it down to build a 4th floor because it just doesn't have the economic return. In 2005, though, he did point out that Broward County had 1 million people, and that 1 million people was consisting of a build-out from the Atlantic Ocean all the way to Weston that was encroaching into the Everglades, not just partially, but literally in the Everglades.
Exactly.
And they projected that in the next 15 years, Broward County would actually add another 1 million people. But how could it? Because it was already 100% built out. Their future land use map was 0 vacant land. And fast forward to 2020, Broward County census population was 1,980,000 people. So it was off by 20,000 of actually building another 1 million people in 15 years. But that's because in Broward County, you could knock down a 3-story building, pay that price, and then build back a 30-story building, get a return on your investment. But like Azul across the street here, if someone were to buy Azul at 3 stories to put a 4th floor on, the return of whatever number of units they got for that 4th floor would never come close to justifying the investment. So we can all know that under our comp plan, no matter what, we're not going to be Broward. But what does that mean? It doesn't mean we're not going to be something, and it doesn't mean we're not going to face some trials and tribulations. So we have to go back to the comp plan and say, well, what does the comp plan think we should be? Well, in 1985, it thought we should be 25 to 30,000 people. In 1992, it thought we should be 25 to 30,000 people. In 1998, there was a lawsuit because of some annexations. We highlighted the stuff north of the bridge, but there was some south as well and some on Indian Street. And after the city of Stuart in 1998 increased its geographic area by 40%, its projected build-out under its comprehensive plan went to 25 to 30,000 people. And then in 2001, when Andre Dwani did the study and said that four-story buildings have to have 25% residential in them, the next comprehensive plan projected the build-out to be 25 to 30,000 people. And then in 2007, the county and the city got together and did a utility agreement and divided up kind of who would provide water to who, but as a part of the consumptive use permit, had to meet with the Florida DEP. They had to do population evaluations, and the Florida DEP said to the city of Stuart, we know that by 2028, you are going to be 28,000 people, and therefore the water consumptive use permit had to be 28,000 people. So the comp, in 2007, the comp plan projected 28,000, which ironically is right between 25 to 30,000 people. So it was consistent with the 1985 comp plan, even though the land had increased by 40%. And then in February of this year, the city commissioners adopted a new consumptive use permit because we opened up our water treatment plant. And after the study was done and a lot of development had happened in the meantime, the projected growth is that if all of the vacant land that's left in Stuart gets developed at the maximum density, the city of Stuart's going to be 23,900 people. So it won't actually reach the 25,000 person number, even if every single vacant land gets built at 30 units an acre with multifamily apartments. Can we go to the next slide? So here's the projected population growth. St. Lucie County is a blip here and comes into play. If you look, Port St. Lucie is a player. Stuart is light blue. It's right here, and it kind of creeps along, and it doesn't go much more. And let's say that's at 18 or 19,000 right here. Let's say it completely builds out, and it does get to that 24,000, so it's going to get to about right there. The city of Stuart has 65,000 people a day that go over the Roosevelt Bridge, and that's because people coming from north of us are traveling into Stuart and to the south of us, and people going to the south of us are traveling from Stuart to the north or through Stuart to the north. And you also have the two bridges going through Palm City that lead to that too. In 2017, the city did a study, and in fact, every single study the city of Stuart has ever done at any workshop as it relates to development, the outcome from the consultants is that the city does not have sufficient housing and that they need more housing. And if you did that study now, they would come back with the same result. Go to the next slide. So the last time the city and the county met, and they have to meet under the 19 Florida Statute 163, the Comprehensive Plan Act requires a concurrency meeting of the cities and the counties and the school boards so that the school boards can project how many student chairs they need, and everybody can project what they were. City of Stuart's projects approved and pending were 0. So in 2023, the city approved 0 units, but it did have 1 single-family home permit issued. Next slide. The county, in review at that meeting, had 5,883 units in review, which is a lot, and that didn't include last year's reviews. That's now. And the difference between the county and the city is that the county is a lot bigger than the city, and the county has a lot more vacant land. But there are no more cities of Stuart getting built. So when neighborhoods and developments and single-family residential and multifamily and apartments and whatever they are and townhouses get built outside of Stuart, it doesn't prevent those people from visiting us, and we love that. We want them to come down. All our store owners love it. It makes Sundays fun. Rock and River Walk is a blast. But those people don't have downtowns. And so they come to Stuart, and we get traffic. But you know what? Nobody cares because it's not bad, and it's still paradise. And in 2003, the City Commission was faced by Florida Department of Transportation that they wanted to widen US 1 and wanted to bring traffic through Stuart faster. And the city said no, and they said, well, if you don't, your concurrency rating is going to be an F. You're going to get a failing grade. It's going to make traffic on US 1 from the Roosevelt Bridge to Jensen Boulevard unbearable. It's going to be terrible. No one's going to like it. And the city said, so what? They had some workshops, and everyone said, well, that's okay. It's going to be a 15, 20-minute ride, but it won't encourage highway and speeding and everything, and maybe people won't come down and they'll stay up north or whatever it is, but we're not widening it anymore. That's that. But the result in that is that we have traffic, and there's no way to stop it other than building more roads, but there's nowhere to put roads because we have lots of rivers and water that prevents that. The question is, what's the balance? Do you want more roads and make the cars go faster, or do you want a little traffic and a little inconvenience, but enjoy your peace of mind, and once you get out of the car, you don't have to care? You know, the next slide. So from 2010 to 2014, the city approved 2,307 units total. That's 2010 to 2014. So, as I pointed out, the last 6 months, Martin County had 5,800 units pending. This is in the last 14 years, the city did that. Now, in 2018, there was some studies and stuff done. Now, what really happened, though, is the projects that came through were all of these. Everyone says it was the 2018 year. But what really happened is all of these add up to the 1,750 or 2,000 units that were talked about and all the apartments that were built that ruined all the neighborhoods and all the other stuff. The truth of it is, though, they didn't. They were planned. They were part of the comp plan. They were there. People like to think that apartments have this negative impact, but if you go talk to the families that live in them, they say, oh God, I don't have to drive on US 1 anymore coming down from wherever it was. I don't have the traffic, and I don't have to wait on the Roosevelt Bridge, or I don't have to wait in Palm City, or I don't have to be on Kenner Highway. I wanted to live closer to my job, and that's what they've done. Now, the other side to it is that there was also vacant land, and can you go to the next slide? And the city of Stuart does not have that much vacant land. Now, here's what we have out of all those units. 63% are approved or completed, 15% are in construction like Costco, and 22% are approved and will be built. But they're all contemplated in the comprehensive plan, in the calculation that was done in February for the water consumptive use permit, et cetera. Can you go again? I think we're about out of slides here, but is that the last one or no? So the reality of it is that from a development perspective, the commercial corridor essentially has 4 times as many jobs as the city of Stuart has housing. And as a result, every single day, all the people that go to those jobs or go there as customers or go there for restaurants or entertainment come in and out of Stuart. But that's okay because we like it, because they bring their money from outside of Stuart and leave it with us. And it causes our economy to flourish. We have options. We could have less jobs, or we could build more housing, or we could maintain our comprehensive plan at the level that it's being maintained, except for no matter what, we were going to have traffic on Canner, on US 1, on East Ocean Boulevard during the business hours, but not on weekends. Like on Sunday you won't, because if the businesses aren't open, then the neighbors don't come in to visit because they don't need to, because the businesses aren't open. And so when you're looking at these development projects, we had 1 approval in 2022 that was 60 units, and then we had 0 in 2023, and we had 0 so far in 2024. And in 2024, as of March, the county had 5,800. What is going to happen at some point is that we aren't going to make up the same percentage of the population. And can you go back? I don't know if we had it in there. The census data, one that showed the populations. So the city of Stuart, being the county seat, gets gas tax and sales tax and other revenue sharing from the state. that is used to fund a lot of our operations. And when we were, say, 1950, or let's say 1990, we were 12,000 people, and the county was 100,000 people. I can do that math. We're roughly 12%. So we get 12% of the sales tax, and 12% of the gas tax, and 12% of the revenue sharing. And so if we wanted to keep up and have equal growth to the county, that is no faster than the county, but the same growth rate as the county, we would be 12% of the county now. So if you look at the county's population, 163, 10% would be 16,000, 12%, 163 times 0.12 would be 19,500, and we're actually at 18,700. So we're losing ground, but the real losing is going to happen next. We have 0 multifamily future land use acres left. We have 0 special neighborhood district future land use acres left. We have 20 single-family home future land use acres left. We have, I think, 6 office residential future land use acres left. We have 130 commercial future land use acres left. So if we build that 130 acres out as commercial, you can anticipate that those jobs and those residential, or those businesses and customers will all continue and populate, but the housing numbers won't, so the profit shares won't continue to stay with it. And to go back to the annexation that I hear a lot about, if in fact, can we go back a couple or forward a slide, like just to the 1974 south of Stuart, right there, that's good. That's south of Indian Street, now go to the next one. So, assuming we didn't annex, you'd presume that all of this didn't get built, but it does get built. So when it gets annexed into the city and built, the city gets its millage or its ad valorem tax. And using Costco as a perfect example, if Costco hadn't been annexed into the city, that land was available and would have been developed, just as the putt-putt golf course that's on Canner Highway is under construction right now with 309 apartments and a mixed-use commercial component to it. And there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying there's anything. I'm just saying that the city gets 0 of those tax dollars. On the other hand, the county gets 6.7 mils of the money generated from Costco because they're still in the county. They're just not in the city of Stuart when you get to the outside stuff. And if you compare that project that's at the putt-putt golf case, the city PUDs require 25% upland preservation. That one didn't. The city in the Costco case required a $5 to $10 million boulevard, 4 lanes wide with a traffic circle in the middle and a park with 10-foot wide sidewalks on either side between Canner Highway and Willoughby Boulevard to be built at the developer's expense, and the one at the putt-putt golf course didn't. And the city required the developer to also, before starting any construction, test the water quality to make it as a flat base. And let's see what the water quality is of this land vacant so that it can continue to monitor that water quality. And its PUD has guaranteed that its water treatment system will clean all of the water, and any water that's draining into the stormwater system off of that property is going to be cleaner than it was when the land was vacant, because they put in literally like a fish tank thing. It's going to have charcoal and cotton, and the water is going to go through filters that have to be changed and maintained. And the city commission is who required that. It wasn't the city staff. It was policies adopted by the city commission and by you guys that said, wait a second, now I need to call a lot of heat for it, but it worked. And you also got a lot of heat that it wouldn't have been developed if it wasn't for you guys. But that's not true either, because if you look at the projects and those 5,800 projects that got approved since Costco that were pending in the county, they all got developed without getting annexed into the city. And Canner Highway, and I know that there's a lot of misconception on social media about what Canner Highway is or isn't or should or shouldn't be, but the truth is Canner Highway is considered an arterial highway, and it's right here. And when it was built, can you go back one? Oh, shoot, there was one more. We're a little further west. I can't see it. Keep going, one more. There we go. So You can kind of see it. It's there, but there was nothing out there. And I know that there's folks that come in that live in here that remember it like that, because I do. And Martin County High School is like right here. And when you got to Martin County High School after that, like there was nothing out here till you got to Indiantown. And it was a 2-lane road and nothing to it. But Florida Department of Transportation saw it as an evacuation route and a 4-lane road. And they also said, we want I-95 to come through Martin County. And back before 1990s, I-95 didn't come through Martin County at all. You had to get off in St. Lucie County, and you had to get back on in Palm Beach Gardens. But they threatened to withhold all federal dollars and all federal highway money if Martin County didn't accept I-95, so it had to. But once it did, that became the exit right there. And it's a 7-mile stretch of road into town. And they knew that that 7-mile stretch of road would end up being a commercial corridor and an arterial highway. So they designed it to be up to 6 lanes or 8 lanes wide. I think it's 3 and 2 throughout. And then in like 2000, I think it was 11 or 12, the county commission were approached by Florida Department of Transportation, and they were going to widen it, which they did. But they also put in sound walls. And that was because the volume of traffic that they anticipated going on that road was going to be so high that those neighborhoods were going to need sound walls to protect them. That was not a surprise when then later Popeyes started getting built, and Wawa's and racetracks and apartment buildings and other commercial activity and Publix and things and Walgreens. But that is a highway just as significant as US 1 is. And in FDOT and the state of Florida's eyes, that's what it was intended for. And the volume of traffic on it was intended for that as well, which is why when the developers come before the city staff and say, can we do this, that, or the other, and they look at it, they have to say yes, because it meets the standards. But we can all rest assured that it's okay, because under the comp plan, if you follow the 1985 City Commission, your projection should be that your growth is going to be to 25 to 30,000 people. And right now, if you continue at the rate you're going, you won't make it to the 23,000. But if everything gets built out, it'll be 24,000. And as a result, when you approve projects, it needs to be under the guise of the Dwani plan and under that urban overlay zone concept, that it was like the commission's going to get in, and instead of getting beat up and everybody angry at every meeting, it was going to participate with the developer and make it interesting and add things to it to make it meld with the community more and make it more part of Stuart. And we want awnings, or we want benches, or we want shade trees, or whatever it is that bike racks and wider sidewalks. And maybe it's not an industry standard, but it was designed to give the commission an opportunity to grant the request, but at the same time to incorporate and to mold into that request what the commissioners were feeling from the neighbors as it relates to what makes Stuart eclectic and interesting. What's happened with the advent of social media is that instead of it being, let's move forward and mold this into something creative, it's turned into a, if you grant this, you're just developing one more apartment complex and ruining Stuart. And the truth is, that's not how it should be. The commission should set policies, and if it is that you don't want any more apartment buildings, then we need you to amend the code and say no more multifamily. And if we want to have no more people, we need to put signs up and say no more people. But it can't be that we continue to have a code that tells people that here's our future land uses and here's our development, and then when they come through, they're villains. And that's kind of what we're facing. And I will continue updating you, but the truth is, under the development, you can see the city of Stuart really isn't much different. And yes, the infill, I mean, I could go back to the present picture and show you how there's more houses inside the city limits than there were then. But overall, from roughly 1980 till now, there was about 12 to 13,000 people in 1980, and there's 18,000 people now. So a 6,000 person change is not a humongous change. 6,000 people would not have justified the Roosevelt Bridge, I'll promise you that. And in fact, 65,000 people a day go over it. You wouldn't be able to measure 6,000 people traffic impact on the Roosevelt Bridge at all because the volume is so heavy. So I just wanted to update you and show you that the city of Stuart isn't actually the traffic and that it's some of a lot of different components. But you know what else? This is all part of Martin County's comp plan too. So it too is not a big deal. And those growth rates, just so you know, and I did them and I don't have them, the city of Stuart's growth rate from 2010 to 2020 was 1.1% per year. That's it. Now, from 2000 to 2010, it was a little lower. It was 0.6% per year. But I will say, there was a recession in 2007, 8, 9, and 10, so there was some growth drop-off. And with the exception, I think, of 1970, most of the growth rate in the city of Stuart was right around 2% or less, and most of the growth rate in the county has been, with the exception of maybe their first few years, under 3%. And I think for the last 10 years, Martin County's growth rate has been a little over 1% as well. It hasn't been this overwhelming growth. But if you looked at Port St. Lucie to our north, there's been a significant amount of growth. And we feel that with our neighbors that come down regularly, and it's fine. We all get along, and it's great. And when you go downtown, see people, you know, on the waterfront enjoying themselves, it's all, we welcome everybody, and that's wonderful. But we have to decide, do we want more roads, or do we want to say, oh, the traffic's really not that bad? And that's really what you have to think about when you're seeing it all. Thank you. I'll answer any questions you have.
Madam Mayor? Mr. Mortell? Oh,
I just wanted to say
okay.
before we. Sorry. I just wanted to say that as the chairperson, I'm the one that has the control up here, and I do that because I need to keep the control. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I wish you had put this up, but maybe it would probably be controversial. But just to, when we were in the throes of studying for the Bright Line, I think the city had done some studies, and we had a map or a picture either from ourselves or from our consultant. But I think you probably will know this. And it had showed all these zip codes of people just come in and who have used the downtown and so on. And that particular thing wasn't on there. And I'm not saying that we were, you know, and there were people for and against Bright Line and all kinds of things. But there was something there, and that was just, I wouldn't say it was a tip of iceberg or anything, but it was just another thing that showed us in reality what is actually happening and how other factors and other people impact our community, whether we want to or not. And do we want to put up signs? How much will it cost us to put up a big wall around Stuart right now? And just have who we want to have drop in by drone and nobody else. So, I mean,
For what it's worth, next month I will do more of the economic engine and the tourism side of it, which will include the Bright Line and the commercial activities that come forward. And I'll include those slides that showed us that we had about 1.8 million visitors come to Martin County every year, and where they're made up of and where they come from and how they get here. And I'll also do some, from the Department of Economic Opportunity studies on what we see in the city of Stuart and how that impacts us as well. And
It was called the catchment area.
yeah.
yeah. And Mother Mayor, I have two other things, not much. It's just going to be a comment, and maybe it might help you. Stuart, and what is Stuart? And I know that sometimes we're proud. Some people say we shouldn't be because we shouldn't let the cat out of the bag and be a secret. But people say, when we say that we're the coastal town, or we're voted this, or we're voted that, the perception of Stuart is that we're all the way to Hutchinson Island. And people think of Stuart Beach as being Stuart and that kind of thing. So that's
okay.
I know. And so that particular perception is there. And
I totally agree with you, Commissioner Clark, and people have a mailing address that says Stuart. So if someone lives off of Cove Road, has their mailing address and it says Stuart on an envelope, they believe they live in the city limits of Stuart, and that's the perception, and that's okay. And I also want to reiterate, I'm not suggesting that this means you should or shouldn't approve anything. What I'm saying is that the commission communicates with the people in the community, and you guys hear back from them, and you should do what you think is best for Stuart. I just wanted to demonstrate that I keep hearing on social media about how Stuart has like destroyed itself in the last 3 years or 10 years or whatever it was. And I wanted to point out that it really has been very consistent. And that's not to say you should or shouldn't approve something. It just means don't be misled by social media statements that claim one thing when something else might be the case, and do your research. And it doesn't mean that you should let a developer just build to the maximum density on a spot just because he can. You should make him be held to that higher standard and still be continuing to be stringent with them, because that is what got us here. And there's nothing wrong with doing that at all. So I'm not suggesting to have a free-for-all, but I also will point out that if in fact you were to say have a free-for-all, the public doesn't have to worry, because we'll still only end up with 24,000 to 25,000 people as our population, because there's no land left and there's nowhere left to annex, because the borders have all been built already. So there's no incentive for anybody to annex into the city. There might be patches here and patches there, but there will never be 100 acres annexed into the city from this point forward, because there's just nowhere to annex. And as a result, there'll never be a time that Stuart reaches that 25 to 30,000 number, because it's just not going to happen. The sky isn't actually falling.
Thank you. The third thing, Madam Mayor, and that's my last thing, maybe this is a Jody thing or it's something for the future again, Mr. Mortell. When we used to have the Department of Community Affairs, there were all these EAR appraisal and reports and annual reports and comprehensive plan updates and all these things. Now we have the Department of Economic Opportunity, and there's different rules and different ways. Plus, we have something called the state legislature that does a lot of things to our local government. And so is there a annual report, just for the citizens' perspective, just trying to, that we have to report to the Department of Economic Opportunity on our comp plan amendments, comp plan changes, and that kind of thing, just to let people know what the status is now and how things are done?
So the Comprehensive Plan Acts, I think it's 164.1864, whatever it is, says that you have to do a comprehensive evaluation every 7 years. Our own comprehensive plan says that we will update the balance and the need between our housing needs and our commercial needs every 3 years. The last time we did it was in 2017, and it's about $50,000 to do it. And the reason that I'm not spending the money to do it is because if you do the study, it'll say we need housing. And the consensus has been to limit housing, and so I don't need to spend 50 grand to say we need housing, just like it said in 2017, 15, 13, 11, 10, 9, 7, 5, 3, 2, 1, all of the 90s, all of the 80s. Every single report we've ever done has said we need more housing. Never once have we done a report or hired somebody and come back and have it not come to that conclusion. So instead of spending $50,000 on the study, just telling you, the study's going to tell you need more housing. I know that there's a consensus that people perceive the population growth as the negative side to it, so I don't do the study. That's okay. There's enough demand for housing anyway, so we're just playing along. But it's not that it's being ignored, and it's not that staff isn't aware of it. We deal with it every day. It's just that we also know the direction from the commission, and that's to not go in that direction, so we haven't.
But people may still come in with comprehensive plan amendments
Certainly.
or commercial land uses that they may want to change to residential.
And quite frankly, the state 2 years ago passed the Live Local Act, and it said that any commercial land can be built to 30 units an acre and 4 stories by right without us administratively if they put a parking in for it, and et cetera. They amended it last year to say that it doesn't apply to anything within 10,000 feet of an active runway. And I have a map that I can see that shows what it's 200 feet on either side of the runway and 10,000 feet out. And there's 3 active runways at Witham Field that fall into it. But the vast majority of Stuart still falls under the Live Local Act, because the original Live Local Act amendment was 10,000 feet of the airport, which would have covered all of Stuart or most of it. But what was ultimately adopted was just the active runway language. So developers could come in right now on the commercial property and build the Live Local Act. There's certain regulations and compliances and parking and other issues that prevent it because our code is restrictive as it relates to the parking. And that was intended by the 2001 rewrite of the code to make it so that when people came forward for these projects, they would come before the commission so that the commission could have influence on those projects.
May I add something? Today, I don't know, I think it was around 1:30, but I was at the Martin Memorial Cleveland Clinic, Dr. Singh, and there was 20 of us at a round table. And before we left, that was his biggest thing, that he's the biggest employer of this county, 3,000 employees. They need to hire 300 more. And they're all coming from, most of them out of town. There's just, other companies are wanting to move here, good paying jobs, but it's just not
Well, the
out.
housing's full.
Yeah.
The reason their employees are coming from out of town is because we're full.
Madam Mayor, I'm sorry, I hate to. Can you please explain to the public the ISO rating, please, for our community?
I will when we get to manager comments. I just couldn't resist throwing that in, but it's an insurance rating the firefighters get that's hard to accomplish. And on Friday, they got notice that they had just achieved it again, and I knew that some of them were here. And for anybody that was listening or watches this video, it was all in jest. I wasn't trying to offend anybody or anything. Come on, it was just fun.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to add to that, it's probably kind of cute. When I was growing up here, 69 and 70s, when all these 55 and older condos came in, and we hated it. Didn't want any part of it. It's like, oh my God, what are we going to do? All these old people here.
But now we're
And when they
close to
built them, they didn't save any land. It's just all concrete. And, oh my gosh, this is where it's going to be for the rest of my life. But anyway, it sure has changed a lot since I was a little girl.
As I've gotten older, I've learned that second floors are a lot more complicated than I used to think.
Yes, sir.
Those folks aren't so old anymore.
Commissioner Collins.
Mike, you're an amazing lawyer. We are blessed to have you, and I hope when I'm campaigning, you come with the same fervor of how we've overdeveloped. I won't argue with you because I think it's poor form as my city manager, but people are incredibly upset with the apartments primarily, and I think maybe when we're not going door to door, or haven't recently, not saying you are
I don't go
disconnected,
door to door.
but it can be easy for us in our bubble to get disconnected from how upset they are that they can't get to the store. They're worried about getting in car accidents. There's ever more traffic, and it would be one thing if we didn't approve thousands of units over a pretty small period of time. My numbers that I had seen were previously when Dave was here were somewhere around 3,000. I saw what you put up,
Those were today.
but it was the housing pipeline, 17 to 20, whenever I ran. But the people who vote clearly feel a certain way, right? Both of us campaigned on
Unequivocally.
yeah, right. So
I also
yeah,
think-
incredibly. Let me hang tight. I fought hard not to interrupt. Again, the 0 units there. It's true that there have been 0 units in that time frame, and that's because the people voted the way they did. And so, I would argue that I hope in the future that these development updates will stay in the realm of actually updating for what development is coming in the pipeline, where today it felt more like sort of apologetics for what we've been doing in the recent future.
So-
And again,
And I'm happy to do a pipeline development as well, but the truth of it was, we had 0 in the pipeline when we started talking about doing it. The intention to do it was to correct misinformation, and I think even when you guys ran, the word was that there were 5,000 units approved. And that
3,000.
there were 3,000 more coming. And the people that were upset about that were living in their homes, it's because they had multiple people knocking on their doors multiple times a week saying, have you heard how much development the city of Stuart's doing? The city of Stuart is overbuilding. The city of Stuart's going to become Broward. The city of Stuart is doing this, that, and the other. And quite frankly, I think a commissioner's job is to disseminate accurate information and to respond as you have to your public and to the people and do what you believe is best for them. So I'm not suggesting that in any way I'm saying that we should have no development or new development or less development or more development. And I didn't do it because of campaigns or elections at all. I did it because every single day my phone rings off the hook with people that call me up with misinformation. And I don't have enough time to call everybody back because the amount of misinformation that is being spread around on different forms of social media and different forms of communication is such that I wanted to put something up on the board to say, look, this is, by the way, that's still a huge number. 2,300 is a big number. It's the most ever in, if you look at the ratios. But
And I would say generally that's what people are feeling upset about when I was going door to door, is that when they bring this up, that the traffic is terrible, it's Port St. Lucie and Martin County at large. Meanwhile, we
this-
approved all of those apartments.
But only 60% of them have been built, so the traffic can't be them. And the reason we approve them is because the studies have shown that these people are driving in for their jobs. So if they lived here, they wouldn't be driving
And to
in, so
that
there's
point,
a traffic balance.
to that point, we cannot control who lives in the units that we bring into existence, correct?
Well, I mean,
And so the assumption that if you build an apartment, that somebody's going to sell their house in Port St. Lucie and pay $3,000 a month to live in an apartment in the city so that they can work in the city is fake.
well,
It's an assumption.
right, but
Correct?
it's a planning level.
And what we end up
assumption.
doing is people from Port St. Lucie are still driving to come into work, but now we've created a space for people from Miami and Fort Lauderdale and New York and New Jersey to come have an apartment and live here, especially during COVID.
Well, what we've actually seen
Which is the
was
more
that
well-rounded way to look at what we've done.
People that live here don't get jobs here and drive to Port St. Lucie to work, and they don't get jobs here and drive to St. Lucie County to work, and that they actually do, in fact, work in Stuart. The vast majority of the apartment dwelling folks work in Stuart.
You can't prove that.
You can talk to them and you can get the data.
We're
from
not
them.
polling
The
these people,
census
Mike.
data pulls all
It
that.
sounds nice, but
But that's where and I suppose that's what I'll add to it so you guys can see where these people are coming. But there is no doubt that there are people that live in Stuart and drive to other places for jobs. There's people that buy houses in Stuart for vacation homes, but nobody rents an apartment for a vacation home. That doesn't happen because it's a rental.
Dr. Singh, today, Dr. Singh, the president of Cleveland Clinic, 300 men and women, nurses, traveling nurses that are here and probably living in some of these apartments and stuff. People come from all around. You don't know where they're going to live.
And to Commissioner Collins' point, I mean, there's no doubt that if you built a 400-unit apartment complex next door to City Hall, you would see an increase in traffic on Flagler Avenue. I mean, there is no doubt that would happen. So it's important to make sure that those apartments are located in places that the traffic is anticipated or the volume can happen. And the reality is there's a 400-unit apartment complexes going up anywhere in Stuart. But either way, the numbers are that you want them spread out. And I didn't put the map up and I didn't show where they were, but the apartments are actually all over Stuart. It wasn't like it was one corridor of apartments. There's some north of the bridge, some south, some as far south as Indian Street, some on Commerce, some over there by the Indian Street Bridge. So they were moved around, and it was in reaction to 5 public workshops, a DEO study, and other stuff that caused that commission to make the decisions that they made. And ironically, the average apartment was renting for about $2,400 a month when the big COVID thing came out and everybody was talking about relocating or whatever it was, and the Live Local Act was being studied. But there's apartments now in Stuart at the newer projects that you can get a 2-2 for $1,900 a month. So the development of those apartments have actually dropped the average price by about $500 a month. And again, I don't know what that means or doesn't mean, and I don't, does it mean with too many apartments and therefore there's a glut? Maybe.
I would just say this is the last point I'll make is due to the nature of what the city is, right? It's this commercial seat that we should be very careful going forward as potentially Seacoast could go up
Agreed.
for sale and Baptist Church. The one we're talking about that's been talking about Edenmar next to Low. These are all places where potentially apartments could exist. And my hope is that given the heritage of this place infrastructure-wise, that we intentionally chose narrow roads, sort of, kind of what you were pointing out, that the city is particularly, and all of the through traffic from everywhere else, the city is particularly vulnerable to poor level of service on roads if we overdevelop it. So my hope is just going forward, and I think I can speak for at least most of the residents, that we do not continue the path previously of more and more, apartment approvals. And I'll stop
And
ranting
I
with that.
don't want to comment on what policies you go forward with or not. What I wanted to do was put up the
Right.
numbers and show what the truth is.
Because even though we're
Digest
built
it however
out,
you want.
even though we're built out, we are going to redevelop.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.